Welcome to English Impulse, the podcast for English learners and, well, basically everyone.
And welcome to our Business Impulse section, where we are looking to improve your business English skills. We'll walk you through real-life situations and show you how to handle them with confidence. Hi, Claire.
Hi, Annie.
Hi, everyone.
This week we're talking about negotiation styles, not theory from textbooks, but real techniques used by well-known leaders and negotiators. And more importantly, how recognizing these styles can help you negotiate better in English.
And negotiating styles do vary from culture to culture, and being able to distinguish the different styles can give you that edge. We'll come back to culture throughout this episode because it affects every tactic.
So, how do you know what tactic to use?
Well, rather than what tactic to use, first establish what your goal is in the negotiation.
Is it a one-off deal? Is it an ongoing relationship? Or an urgent negotiation with a deadline?
Right. Once you determine your goal, you can determine which tactic to use. So, let's start with one of the most dramatic negotiation techniques, the shock opener. This is when someone sits down at the negotiating table and starts with an extreme demand to reset expectations.
A very clear real-world example is Donald Trump with trade negotiations and tariffs.
That's right.
Instead of starting at a realistic position, the shock opener says something like, we're considering a 25% tariff, or in Trump language, we're going to slap a 25% tariff if you don't play ball.
That's right. Even if that final agreement is much lower, everything else feels reasonable compared to that first shock.
And it's important to mention here that some more aggressive tactics like this one are best used when dealing with Western cultures.
Yes, as they are more results-based than relationship-based building.
Oh, could you expand a little bit on that?
Yes, I would love to. So, some cultures are what can be described as results-based, meaning they tend to get straight to the point and prioritize results over getting to know the other person. You showing results makes me trust you. Okay? Now, on the other hand, we have relationship building, which is based on getting to know the other person, gaining their trust before entering into a negotiation.
Okay, understood. And let's now look at another closely related ploy to the shock opener in our negotiating tactics. Anchoring. Anchoring means being the first person to put a number on the table. Once the anchor is set, all further discussions happen around that number.
That's right. And we can hear business phrases like, our standard contract starts at $120,000 per year.
So even if the final price is lower, the anchor has done its job.
That's right. Now let's move on to a third technique that is a very rigid style as well, the take it or leave it.
Yeah, this is where the negotiator presents an offer as non-negotiable. An empty threat, or you are in a position to call that bluff.
Right. We may see big companies who rely on local small suppliers who can squeeze them to the limit because they know they have the upper hand. And so they may use this strategy.
And typical language sounds like, this is our final offer. These are the terms we're prepared to offer.
That's right. And remember, this works best when you have a strong leverage and can back it up.
And another very common technique is the deadline push. Deadlines create urgency, and urgency leads to concessions.
Right. Classic business English phrases. We'll need a decision by Friday. Or this offer expires at the end of the week. All right. Now let's move on to our fifth and what some people may see as the most uncomfortable but powerful technique, silence. You make an offer and then you stop talking.
Silence creates pressure
and uncomfortableness.
The other person often speaks first and may even negotiate against themselves. And this is where, in many Western contexts, not being aware of this can be a costly lesson.
Yeah, right. So what you tend to hear is somebody says something like, that's our proposal, and then they just wait. This is like a shock opener, but without saying anything. Many Western cultures, when faced with silence, may think the other party is indecisive. However, it's important to know that this is a strong test for relationship-based cultures. For them, an opening behavior is not about the deal. It is a test of character.
So while they are silent, they are deciding if you're a safe, long-term partner.
Exactly.
Tough negotiation doesn't have to be aggressive. Some styles focus on long-term relationships. This style focuses on collaboration, trust, and future value. Again, strongly culturally related. Certain cultures will spend more time on trust building than actual number crunching, because they believe that once trust is gained, it will seal any further relations.
You're completely right, but we should also remember that even though a culture may be relationship-based, it doesn't mean they aren't tough negotiators.
No.
It just means that a relationship needs to be developed before they actually sit down at the table. But you'll tend to hear things like, we're looking for a solution that works for both sides, or let's think long-term. All right, moving on to another powerful style is the data-driven negotiation.
This approach relies on facts, benchmarks, and evidence. Some useful phrases, business phrases include, according to market data, based on industry benchmarks.
Data reduces emotion and makes arguments harder to reject.
I can't argue with that.
That's right. And finally, one of the strongest positions in any negotiation, the ability to just walk away.
Powerful but polite language might be, if this doesn't work for you, we understand.
This signals confidence and often brings the other side back to the table.
So, today we've covered shock openers, anchoring, deadlines, silence, collaboration, data, and walking away.
And the key takeaway? If you can recognize the negotiation style, you can choose the right response.
And if you're negotiating in English, learning the phrases is just as important as understanding the strategy.
That's right. We covered a lot of language today, so
We did.
I would like to do a little recap on some of that. You'll notice that today when we were speaking about negotiating, we mentioned different techniques, but we also used different words to talk about those techniques. We said negotiation styles, negotiation tactics, or even ploys.
Yeah, all similar ways to say technique. Another word we heard was leverage.
That's right. Leverage is the power you have to influence or get the results you want. Our next word is concessions.
When we concede, we give something up. So concession is what we give up. Another word we heard was benchmark.
A benchmark is something that is used as a standard when comparing different things in the same industry. Okay. We covered a lot of vocabulary today and a lot of expressions that are often used in negotiations. So if you would like to learn more about those phrases, you can always go to our blog at bloglish.es. That's bloglish.es. And you can learn more and see more examples there.
Okay, so thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the podcast and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.